In Halo lore, we've seen a lot of shocking betrayals. We've even talked about recently how Spartans have betrayed the UNSC in the past. But what about the Covenant's members betraying the Great Journey? Of course, there's the Arbiter, Atriox, and the Heretic Leader, but there's actually more. Considering that the Covenant's been around for thousands of years, there's actually been quite a few ancient traitors. In fact, even more recent ones you may not actually even expect. Some decided to either escape or even fight back against the Covenant. Some of this may be surprising to you, so let's go ahead and recap the traitors and the betrayers of the Covenant.
Ask the Oracle about Halo. How they would sacrifice us all for nothing.
More questions? Splendid.
Before we get into the lesser known examples of Covenant members betraying the Empire, let's get into the more familiar ones. Firstly, nicknamed simply the Heretic Senkili or Heretic Leader, in Halo 2, Sessi Rafumi, just days after the destruction of Installation 04 in Halo 1, Guilty Spark encountered him and told him the true nature of the Ring, the fate of the Foreigners, and the Flood. Knowing this truth, his division planned to revolt against the false prophets, in which the Arbiter came to stop his heresy. He was the antagonist of Thel in Halo 2, but ultimately Thel would later come to realize the same truth about everything, including the Covenant's demise, and become a heretic himself after being swayed by the Gravemind and with further evidence that firing the rings would end in his destruction.
The elites are blind, Arbiter, but I will make them see.
Lastly, for the notable ones is Atriox. And sort of like the others, he actually throughout his entire life didn't have much belief for the Great Journey, nor a whole lot of cheerleading to do for the Covenant.
And so battle by battle, war by war, 39 brothers at a time, Atriox was born. With every victory, his legend and his hatred of the Covenant grew.
Battle after battle, his comrades were thrown into suicide missions, and he was always the one to survive. Bitter, Atriox complained at a dying Marine in which another brute overheard his rambles about the Covenant's absurd actions. The brute challenged Atriox for his heresy and his disbelief, but in the end, he had killed another member of the Covenant, and when ordered to be executed, he rose against his executioners, grew followers, and the legend grew to become a faction, the Banished, as he and the Banished would go on to be the Covenant's second biggest target for decades, with humanity being the first. Now let's talk about Aza Zealous. He was the Senkili commander and served as a military commander for Senkilios during the San Shyam and Senkili War. Now if you don't know, before the forming of the Covenant, the elites and the religious prophets, the San Shyam, forces had fought it out. By the end of the 120-year-long war, Aza had a son that had actually died in combat and had seen way too many of his comrades die in the battle with the San Shyam to simply be okay with them making peace. By the end, the Writ of Union, which is basically the documentation and the foundation of the Covenant itself, had declared peace between the two great species, the San Shyam and the Senkili, and the great journey of the two species had begun. However, the Senkili, at least Aza felt like, that they had surrendered to the San Shyam. Aza had started spreading word to others to not trust the Covenant, but when word got around that he was gossiping and speaking to others to not trust the religious faction, Covenant fighters were sent and opened fire on his keep and hundreds died, but Aza and others survived. They retreated to Senkilio's southern pole and hid inside a dormant volcano and began a rebellion. They eventually left to a foreigner planet much like Requiem, a shield world, namely 0673, in which they encountered the enduring Bias, whom agreed that they could use the planet as a refuge. The shield world went on to be known as the Refuge. The population called themselves Asans, and not too long later, the Covenant eventually had found them and invaded. The planet's dissembler process had been activated, and it actually seemed to destroy the shield world, and the Covenant retreated. Aza survived with many others and promised his people that they would return to the home planet of Sankilios one day. Now, he had been long gone by the year of 2552 and by the time that the Master Chief story begins, but ultimately the Azans lived on the refuge for over 3,000 years, hiding away until the Human Covenant War finally defeated the Covenant and they were finally able to return home safely. Now let's get into another story about a Kig-Yar, a jackal. Described in both Halo Wars Genesis and Halo Essential Visual Guide, a Kig-Yar named Krith was an infamous pirate, but also a prince. He had personal vaults, a variety of weapons, including a custom Type 27 beam rifle coined as Krith's left hand, which is actually a wreck in Halo 5, a pretty strong one. In my research, it's unclear what Krith had done to be considered a heretic, but it's pretty obvious that he was in some sort of rebellion. But nonetheless, he was killed later by Reaper Morimi, the same arbiter that we see in Halo Wars, but considered Reaper was a part of the Covenant force known as the Ministry of Preservation. All this really does conclude that Krith had a rebellion big enough to be a threat to the Covenant's upholding, or at least its religion. And while Krith didn't take down the Covenant, he certainly took a huge chunk out of Morimi's division. Another traitor, or should I say traitors, to the Covenant is maybe something that isn't so obvious, and that is the Prophet of Truth, Mercy, and Regret. Now, firstly, this may seem flat out wrong and confusing, but if you look closer into the lore, yeah, they actually betrayed the Great Journey, probably more than any rebellion. I think they did.
But this world lies dormant. It is just a shell.
Blasphemy! The key will be found with patience. But perhaps there is a quicker way. The human female from the ice relic.
See, these three guys were not actually in power when they discovered that the entire religion was based on lies, and that humanity was actually the chosen one by the foreigners. Knowing this, they ascended to power pretty quickly, took the names of Regret, Mercy, and Truth, and they ordered that the Covenant to eradicate humanity, basically before anyone could discover that the entire Covenant was based on bullshit. Although the Covenant's religion was, well, wrong to start out with, they had sent the Covenant to its doom by attacking humanity, and millions and millions and millions have died and were eventually completely wiped out, almost completely annihilating their own species, with the San Chayon being taken over. Not only were they annihilated by the Sinkili on their ships when they discovered that the Great Journey was bogus, but they also were annihilated by the Flood, which they kind of ran themselves into indirectly by their choices of annihilating humanity. So basically, these three traitors ended up murdering 90% of the Covenant, in a sense. Lastly, there was a heretic named Thal Chavami. You may recall a 20-minute episode of an extremely powerful elite taking on the Covenant. Before the Human Covenant War, Thal had become a great leader of his clan. Although his respect in the Covenant was very high, he refuted to take on the Covenant's religion as his own or validate it at all. Refusing to accept what he just did not believe, his wife was executed. The Covenant sent assassins after Thal and even a huge Covenant force, but none proved skilled enough to kill Thal until Haka, which was a member of his own clan, and he came to kill Thal and was actually successful during a duel. In fact, the episode in Halo Legends is called The Duel. Because of Thal's actions, it had actually led to all future arbiters change from a glorious, honorable rank as he was to a shameful, disgraceful one that would result in death by a suicide mission for the greater good of the Covenant, in which Thel Vadam, about 100 years later, would partake in. He would go off to do a suicide mission to kill another heretic, and perhaps what Thal did here had indirectly helped the destruction of the Covenant and got revenge for his wife's death by helping Thel Vadam be in the right place at the right time and lead the rebellion against the Covenant many years later. So guys, that's it, but let me leave you with a question. If you were a member of the Covenant, would you betray the Covenant, or would you just I don't know, take advantage of everything and loot and destroy humanity and whatever. Remember, you're an alien in this theoretical question. Anyways, guys, which story did you find the most interesting or shocking? Let me know down in the comments below, and would you like more videos like this? I want to hear all down in the comment section below, your thoughts, your feelings, what you had for breakfast. Guys, I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. By golly, your life depends on it. Guys, there are so many more exciting Halo videos coming your way. If you just subscribe and hit that notifications button, I will see you in the next one. Later.